Hey folks, welcome to the Pipnotic Symposium for the 13th of August 2019. I'm sitting at home, which is in the jungle, so you might hear a couple of dogs in the background barking or a motorbike that rides past now and again, so I apologize for any disturbances. But today I just wanted to cover briefly what I was doing earlier on, or rather the open of the Asian session, which is where I am. And so what I like to do is I like to look at currency strength that begins comparison of all 8 currencies since the beginning of a given session. So if we have a look at the configuration of the currency strength software, you can see I've put this the mode to session open. So this will simply force the indicator to look at this information here, which tells this is this is 8 o'clock in the morning, offset of these different sessions. So my broker time is, I think it's GMT plus 2. And so where's the Asian, where's the London? So the European Open is 10 o'clock here, so 10 o'clock minus 2, GMT plus 2, so go back 2, and that is 8 o'clock London time. Okay, and this is the Asian session, and here we have the North American session. So when you do that, the software starts calculating a currency strength so that you can see what's being bought and what's being sold for that currently active session. And right now the London session just opened, and so you'll probably see a bit of fireworks and a bit of heavy buying and selling as the banks get set up here to do business. And so you have, what I like to do is I like to look on the shorter time frame for this. And this is something I've been experimenting with while I'm waiting for my bigger orders to fill, because sometimes I have an order put in the market and it doesn't get filled for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, and sometimes even a couple of months. And so in the meantime, it's nice to have a little bit of trading activity for the daily or the short-term income. Okay, and so I mean, looking at this stuff is really powerful, because if you can see what currencies are being bought and which currencies are being sold from the get-go of any given session, I mean, this is a tremendous bit of information. And so I was looking earlier on at the Canadian dollar, euro. So if I pull that one over here, it's difficult to see here. Let me, as a matter of fact, set the software to only show the 2 active currencies. And this looks very different now because the look back is very small, because the session opened 7 minutes ago. Okay, this is why it's very choppy. But when I was trading, the look back was a lot bigger, so there were many more minutes since the open of the session, so there was a lot more profound information. Here you can just see kind of choppy information since the start of the session. As a matter of fact, we can also where do we have that? We don't have that there, so I'm just going to mark it off. I'm looking for the vertical line that tells us when the session opens. So if we go back right here, this is where the session opened. Okay, this is when the London or the European session opened, just here on the close of this candle. This is 3 o'clock. So when this happens, boom, then things start happening. Okay, and so what I wanted to do was, I could see that the Euro Canadian dollar was selling off, which I could see here in the currency strength. So it looked like this. So we had Canadian dollar, which was going up, and the euro that was going down. And I looked at this little price nodule just here. So the price nodule, sorry, I tell a lie, it wasn't that one, it was this one here. It was on the 5-minute chart. So it was this one that was being used. Go to the 1-minute chart, and at the time price came up to here, I was looking to begin to sell, because I could see that we had the Canadian dollar, which was getting stronger, and the euro that was getting weaker. So I was expecting price to come up to this area here, or this area here, or at least the highs of this area here, because this is kind of the beginning of the sell zone, and then begin to work its way down. And so I used pools to open the trade. So the first one was here, and I think it was 1 pip between each of them. Okay, give me 2 seconds. Let me pause the video and I'll put the trades on the chart. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, here we are. So you can see here, the first entry was just here. the second one here, third one, and the fourth one was here. So I had 4 trades, and the targets were here, 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 and here. And they got filled pretty quickly thereafter. So price kind of poked up into those. You can see we got filled, and then they started just like poking into these profits. One of them I took off a little bit early, but otherwise they managed to slip down by themselves, which is really nice. And notice that even though we're on the 1 minute chart, the Asian session's not that powerful. But notice how price respects these little tiny areas of supply and demand nonetheless. Okay, and so you can see we had this one here. I wanted to be out of all of these positions when price got down to here. So this is the last one that got taken out just here, and it's just like just a few pips. So price came down. I got out of the trade. We poked into this area here, and this is where we saw the reaction back up to opposing supply. It's not really supply here because we did not consume this demand, but we have the beginning of the sell zone just here, and so we could expect price to go up to this area here and turn around. And this is where it went a little bit deeper, so seeking liquidity to do what? To drive price lower. And this is when we move through this. So then you ask yourself, what area of supply consumed this demand? Well, something up here. We can't see anything here because it's a very small area. This is probably like kind of a tick chart supply, because it took this one out just here. And so I was just expecting this to move away as a result of what I was seeing here, and also what I could see on the price chart. And so when I was trading this, I wasn't just clicking in on any pair. I was doing something that looked like this, and I'll show you what I do. So I'd go on the 1 minute chart, and I just drag them over one by one. I wanted to see very clear divergence. Here we have the beginning of currency strength divergence. You can see the American dollar is picking up, the euro is moving lower. We're reacting at this demand, but not good enough, so I got to keep going. So you can see here we have the pound moving off, the dollar's picking up. You can see this very clearly, how price is creeping lower. I was just going like that, and I was looking for really clear pushes away. Now those are both going up. Those are very close to each other, hence the sideways price movement. I was just doing this until I find something that I like, and it was starting to look like this, but of course I had much more data, so that the signal was a lot clearer. Okay, so let's try this one here. Nothing, don't have any Swedish kronas in there. I've got the euro. See, these two are kind of moving in towards each other. So you can see there's nothing really to do at the moment. We have this area of demand that's been taken out. This one here. Now these two are looking interesting. The dollar's picking up. You want the dollar to continue to move higher, which it's not doing. I also had a position to buy here earlier on based on the same information, but price missed my entry by a couple of, no, maybe a pip. Let me find that for you. Yeah, here was the entry, so I put it on here, and price got very close, and because price got close enough to it and it went up to opposing supply, I was worried that it would have gone through and to hit my stop, which it would have, because you want price to reach your entry before it hits opposing supply, because, and this is really important, if it hits opposing supply, then it's that supply that's driving price and no longer the demand that we were looking at here. Okay, so price did not come and fill my order. Instead, it got close, it went up to opposing side of the market, found some sellers, and then it started to move down, which is bad for my case, so I closed it off and got out of that trade. But I was looking at this here at, let's have a look where, at around here. So price moved up, we have the candle that left the edge of the area is the low of this candle, the slingshot was pulled back here, but price didn't get there. So all done. So this is what I was looking for, and you can see this very slowly. If I perhaps go to another configuration where I maybe put the look back a little bit bigger, like so, just to show you, it looks like this. When there are more minutes since the start of the session, you'll start to see the divergence looking like this, and this is pretty clear. About the time that this was formed here, we had a sell, and then this was formed, price went away, it moved up, there's nothing clear here, but this was formed, and then price left, and then we have on top of that currency strength divergence. And so that would have been a really nice reason to sell once price came back down here. Okay, and you can see that, I mean, this buying has now swapped. And so if you read the latest article on the post, on my website about price action and liquidity distribution, you'll notice something called the flip, which is what these guys were talking about, and that was essentially where you would reach kind of a stage in a cycle. And cycles, you have microcycles, and they go all the way up to the macrocycles, where the momentum and liquidity switches. Okay, and so despite the fact that at this stage I was looking to buy, once price came down to this area and found liquidity, then we had a flip. Okay, and so this simply means that the buyers in this specific situation outweigh the sellers, and so this is why you might want to be a little bit careful buying for the time being. Okay, because here you can see that we have the Swiss franc, which is stronger, so we have the thin liquidity, which is down. The thick liquidity is up, and this is because, rather, this is very clear to us here because we have the Swiss franc, so we have a supply of the Australian dollar, and we have demand for the Swiss franc. Okay, you can see this because supply, this is high. Sorry, we have demand, which is above the line, and we have supply, which is below. Okay, so you can see this very, very clearly in this specific graph just here. But it's a really exciting strategy. It works very powerfully, but you do have to sometimes be able to sit on your hands, which can be quite difficult. And notice here, while we've been sitting here looking at this chart for a moment, that we have the Swiss franc, which is stronger than the Australian dollar. Look how price just has a really tough time moving higher ever since these lines crossed around here. Okay, so price is just kind of drifting lower. Okay, does that mean that you just want to start selling when this happens? It doesn't. It just means that you want to look at supply to sell. So this is telling you that you have a short bias for the Australian dollar, Swiss franc. You want to be very careful buying. If you want to buy, then you want to buy low enough so you're pretty sure that where you're entering, that flip would have occurred or will occur roughly where your entry is. Okay, so you can just see it's pretty clear how this works. And if we go back and look at the configuration here where we talk about here the session opening, let's have a look at that. You can see it's starting to spread out, the lines are starting to widen a little bit and smoothen out, and this is simply because we're moving further away from the entry. So now we are 18 minutes since the open of the session. Swiss franc is still moving higher, and we have the Australian dollar, which is kind of creeping higher as well. Okay, so you can see that here we have a low, high, low, high, low, low, high, low, high, and then the low here on the Australian dollar. And so I think it's clear to say that the Australian dollar is dictating the movement for this current movement in price. Okay, this is looking pretty flat, you can see, and this here we have the zigzag. It's so certainly flat towards the end here. Okay, but it's a really fascinating approach. As a matter of fact, some years ago I wrote an automated trading robot that traded currency strength, and it did really well. It was 100% hands-off, and it pulled in about 30% each year, and it ran for about 3 years. So it's a really powerful tool. And so supply and demand combined with currency strength is really, really interesting and powerful. And I've done a few presentations in the past about currency strength and supply and demand, and I posted one just here. So if you go to the supply and demand channel, you'll see it just here. And this is simply, there's the hackathon. Where is it? I've got it here. Let me find it once. Okay, you can see it just here. Okay, and so this is just a nice presentation that talks about relative currency strength in relation to trading. Okay, and it talks a little bit about the distribution of liquidity and why banks are buying to drive price lower, which sounds a little bit counterintuitive. And here we have discussions about like the thin side of the market and the thick side of the market, which is really interesting, especially in relation to currency strength. Okay, so there's a lot of information here that you might find interesting, and I put that in there, and feel free to have a look and share it with anyone who may have any interest in looking at it. Okay, cool. Well, I just want to make this a really short and sweet video. I mean, you guys do have access to the GFX currency strength indicator. This beast has been running for almost I've had some updates along the way, but it's been running in its in basically this form for over 7 years. Okay, so it's a really solid piece of software, and it works really well. So if you haven't used it, give it a shot. It's a phenomenal tool, and it's a very configurable piece of software. And there are videos that discuss this, but you can tell it to calculate currency strength since the beginning of sessions. You can set it to some standard look back period, which could be 30 periods, and this can be whatever period you're looking at. But it can also be used to look for currency strength since the open of a given period. So if we wanted to look to, for example, currency strength since the beginning of today, I would put look back period. So I'd put look back to open period, and it would do this, and it would show us that the Swiss franc is indeed in power. And you can see that we had the shift occurred just here, just about here. And when that shift occurred, well, then the Swiss franc started to move. The Swiss franc started to move higher, and the Kiwi lower. So really powerful stuff. And look how now we have a shift occurring. There's like a bit of a flip. And look, isn't that beautiful how it lines up nicely with this little area of demand? Okay, so yeah, keep your eye on that and see how that works out. But it's a fascinating tool. And also, I mean, another thing that's really cool is that you can set this to, for example, like the week. So to look to the beginning of the week. And this information is much more profound. Okay, so you can go to, for example, the hourly chart, and you can see how these two currencies have performed relative to one another since the beginning of this week. Let me delete these levels, just something I've been experimenting with. And you can see that at this point here, right here, you were told to start to sell. I mean, how well would that have worked out? I mean, look at that. Prices went on and on. Let's say you got in late and you got down here. Price still went 230 pips. Okay, so it's a really powerful tool when used properly. Okay, so I encourage you to have a look at it. And all Pipnotic members have access to this, so go crazy. And if you want me to do like a more in-depth analysis or symposium on the topic of currency strength, I'd be thrilled to do so. Okay, cool. Well, I'll leave it at that. Short and sweet. Thanks for watching. Any requests for the next symposium, just fire them off in the requests channel, and I'll get to them as soon as I can. Thanks so much for watching.